since the American Indian hasn't been able to hear his voice heard, or have his voice heard, anywhere in the history of the United States, I felt that it was a marvelous opportunity for an Indian to be able to voice his opinion to 85 million people. But I don't think that people generally realize what the motion picture industry has done to the American Indian. I don't think that people generally realize what the motion picture industry has done to the American Indian. What the motion picture industry has done to the American Indian.
Please welcome to the stage, Cole Brings Plenty.
RNCI's, the Native Indigenous Student Academy for Cinematic Arts, is a program of Red Nation Celebration Institute amplifying emerging Native Indigenous student filmmakers.
Hello, everyone. Donashi Oyate Wianka Powin, people who see this woman, Joanelle Romero Conce. Thank you all for joining us today for RNCI Conversation Series on Native Women in Film and Television, Why We Wear Red. Native Women in Film and Television in All Media, Why We Wear Red is an initiative of Red Nation Celebration Institute, the longest running successful Native women-led Indigenous media, arts, and cultural nonprofit enterprise in the history of the entertainment industry, and the first Native Indigenous nonprofit funded by the City of Los Angeles. Our mission at Native Women in Film and Television is a powerful media coalition initiative aimed at raising global awareness about the glaring lack of inclusion of Native women in film and television in all media. The issue is directly intertwined with the devastating pandemic of missing and murdered Native Indigenous women, girls, and relatives. This conversation is most likely going to be, we have to do this disclaimer of a trigger warning because we're going to be discussing the what's going on with our missing and murdered Indigenous people. And I may sound a little bit nervous, which I am, because this is a very important conversation for me personally, and for all of you out there who are listening all over the world. This issue continues to happen today, and we need to have people held accountable. And so we're going to have this conversation regarding someone very, 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 very special in our community. Our guest today is Joe Brings Plenty, a respected member and former chairman of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. Joe is also the brother of actor Mo Brings Plenty. We are here today to share the tragic story of Joe's son, Cole Brings Plenty, who was reported missing and was later found deceased on April 5th, 2024. Cole was a shining light and an up-and-coming star in our industry. He was best known for his role as Pete Plentyclouds in the first season of the television series 1923. At the time of his untimely passing, Cole was 27 years old and attending Haskell Indian Nations University. Joe, thank you for being here with us today. Know that you and your family are in our thoughts, as you continue to grieve. Everybody welcome Joe Brings Plenty.
Mitakiapi. Changleshka Tataka Imachia na Washichu Imachia Joe Brings Plenty. Ma Oglala na Minikoju Lakota. Hello, my relatives. My name is Joe Brings Plenty. I hail from the families, the Tiwahes of the Oglala and Minikoju Lakota, and I'm happy to be here to be able to share some of the experiences that we had in the past year with you. Thank you, Jenna.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, Joe, and touch on, because this is such a deep conversation and we're not going to be able to get into all the details and all of that, but of what really happened with your son, Cole. But there are some really good questions that I'd like to bring awareness about to the world. Can you share more about who Cole was beyond his public persona, his passions, his dreams, and what he stood for?
Cole was second oldest of my two sons. My older, there was Joey, there was Cole, there was Seth, there was Brett, and their older sister Kiva, and younger sister Belle, and youngest sister Sophie. And Cole was he was always as a baby. One thing I really learned a lot as a parent from our children. One thing I've learned from Cole as a child is that can we hold on a second, please? Can we wait?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second.
We may have to start over that question.
Okay. Sorry, I had a whole bunch of people standing in front of me, so I had
No
to get them out of the room. I was just like,
Yeah, you could just start over, like, just pretend I asked you the question.
okay, then I'll
But
start
you can
again.
edit it.
Okay. Sorry, I was
I
like,
have a wolf in front of me. No.
yeah. Well, they all left, so it's good. Okay, so I'll go ahead and cue again. So I'll go ahead and Cole was the second oldest of my sons, and there's Joey, there's Cole, there's Seth, Brett, Bal, and then Sophie is the youngest. And they have an older sister. Her name is Kiva. Cole was very with the size of our family. They were always doing things. One thing when I think of Cole, I always remember when he was a child. People think that children are and we know children are resilient when it comes to traumas in their life. One thing I remember with Cole was that their mother, Joey and Cole, she chose not to be a part of their life, but I seen how that affected Cole, and I always remember that people think that children, well, they're young enough, they'll forget, or they're young enough, it's not going to be that big of an issue. But I don't think so. As a parent or even a mother, for a child, and I think that will always continue to be something that they'll always have questions why. And I seen that one with Cole. I learned that when he was just a baby. Really, I guess maybe understood. It helped me to understand how, I mean, how much of a you know, of a strong spirit that he was, that he could feel these things without having to be told or maybe not understand. But one thing is that um, my children, always it's kind of hard to talk about this because I try to stay as private as I can, and I love my children.
Yeah.
And I miss my son. I have a lot of good memories of him at home. Um, he never complained. He was just always doing stuff. He had a lot of energy. He was always doing something that was, I know he knocked out a couple of my car windows one time. He had a good arm. uh, they would, him and his brothers, they would always WWE it in the back, and they were really close. They're always close. All the kids were close. It was just, it was something I always wanted for my children, because I grew up with that too, with me and Mo and my older brother and my siblings and cousins. I mean, it's just Lakota families. They have those extended families, and they're all really close units. And Cole was, he was right in the middle of that. I when some years, after being a single father, I met my current wife, and she took both the boys as her own. And for me, it was really good to see them know, that nurturing from a mother. I think that's important, and so they were always close to her. Things that were going on or whatever, they would, unless it was like some maybe questions in regards to culture or some other things. And there's always a difference of conversation that you have between your mother and your father. And so there was a difference of conversation between me and their mother, which was good. I feel that content. I feel happy that with being able to raise my children. And people think it's really tough, but if you enjoy it, I wish I can go back and do it again. It was something people would say, gee, you have how many kids? And I'm like, hey, I I'm never gonna be alone. I'm always gonna be with them regardless. And it's to me, it was a blessing, a privilege to be able to be a father. My his oldest brother is was a young leader. I mean, you could just tell. And he always watched after his siblings and stuff, and I was watching after Cole too. And I think it was in a conversation of actually moving down there too with him. But thinking back, Cole he was a natural entertainer. He liked to make people laugh, and he liked to dance. I mean, we used to have these DJ dances at home to raise money for the boxing club. And he would always come over there, and he'd be about 9, 10 years old, and he would have a bunch of the girls dancing around him because he liked to dance. And
he's gorgeous.
yeah, he was one of his aunts. I used to argue with her because she would say, where's my pretty boy? And I'm like, what, I'm a,
Yeah.
the masculine, the part of the parent. And I'm like, there ain't no boy that's pretty, and I'm like, he's a boy, how could he be pretty? But yeah, she was right. He was a beautiful young man, and he enjoyed it, and he didn't carry himself that way either. He wasn't that type of person to look, to be condescending, to look down on people. He treated people with respect, and we always push that idea within the family is you treat people the way you want to be treated. And if they can't treat you nice, then don't be around them. So he was like that. He would, treat people good. that's why people are always surprised, you know, well, he treated me good, you know, and look at him. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, let that be an example, you know, let him be an example on how to treat relatives or be a good relative. Um, one thing that he did too, and I don't, when I was down at Haskell, I was talking in conversation with some of his friends and asking them if they knew that he played drums. I mean, he was a really accomplished drummer. Um,
You know that.
yeah, he was. Oh wow, he was. Um, I bought a drum set for him, and it was like loud every day. It was loud in the basement, so I ended up buying a electric drum set for him, and with headphones, and man, he just he excelled. It looked like he had like a 2 foot bass kit, and he was fast, and he could keep it. That was tough to see. I mean, to you know, I tried. He said, "You just move this way." You know, I it was he was self-taught, and he excelled at it, and he was good. You know, he was an accomplished boxer. I don't know if people knew that about him, but he fought some wars with some of these young kids, you know, that, you know, they're all growing up now and stuff, and they would all shake hands and give each other a hug, and then you see them playing with each other afterwards, you know, and that's just the type of individual that he was. Um, through through grade school, he mainly spent most of his life living on Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, on the reservation there, and and a couple of years there. One year he went to school up in Rapid City, and then the following year he went to school between Red Cloud Indian School and Kyle, Little One, and he enjoyed it. I mean, everywhere he went. I mean, like I said, you know, he just you know, people really got along well with him. He fit in everywhere he went. He got along well with people too, and the individuals he hung out with, it was just a mixture of everybody. It is, you know, he didn't have a certain type of individuals that he hung out with. He hung out with the jocks over here. He hung out with the brainiacs over here. You know, he hung out with the artists over here. You know, maybe the musicians. I mean, he just hung out with them all, and you know, he could do that, and he enjoyed it. You know, he was, and his energy level was kind of through the roof. You know, he would he would I knew that if he called me like at 9 at night or 10 at night, then I probably just know that I'm gonna be on the phone till about 12 or 1, and we would have good conversations. And he really was proud of the fact of his bloodline, and he you know, he's a relative of Sitting Bull, you know, a descendant on that side, and um, my on my wife's side, my kids from her, they're all, because she's a Crazy Horse descendant. So I was used to tell them, I was like, you know what? I said, cause you guys, I said, I get I get to spend time with relatives of the heroes that I had growing up, you know, between Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. So, you know, he was really interested in the history, the old stories, the ceremonies, and he excelled at that as well too. You know, he did during like our Sundance, when you have somebody help individuals with certain like offerings, he was one of them that would we always counted on, because he was the one that would be there to direct that part of it, and to be able to help everyone. And he stood out underneath that sun for a long time, like all day, and he would be helping people, and he was strong. You know, I really you know, I really admired that strength of his. But yeah, he did a lot of things. One thing too he wouldn't do is he wouldn't stand by and watch somebody, you know, be bullied or picked on. He would actually step in and stop it. And I know one time he came back to the apartment that I was in over in Rapid City, and he had some blood on his shirt. So I was like, I had to interrogate him and find out what happened. And it turned out that he was just down the street with some friends of his, and there was a friend of him who was black, and there was some Caucasian kids in the area there, and they were older than them, and they were picking on him. They're like slapping these kids, and so he stuck up for them, and he ended up you know, kind of going some rounds with one of those kids, and but he ended up because he was a wrestler too, so he ended up wrestling him down, and you know, pinned him and made him give up. And that was the end of that. But, you know, I told him, I said, you need to be careful, especially out in these areas like this. And, you know, because we were away, you know, off the reservation and away from home and stuff. And
Yeah.
so it's a dangerous setting sometimes, especially for an individual like him. You know, it's you know, like I said, you know, he had a lot of young ladies that really liked him. If he like the last boxing match where was at over in Omaha, um, a couple months before the whole incident last year, I, I said, my wife was like, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going with him because they're gonna go up to the concession stand." And she said, "Well, why is that?" I said, "I think I can get free food if I go with him." So I went up there, and sure enough, they were giving me like snacks and stuff, you know. the the girls that were running the concession stand. So it was funny, but you know, I knew that, you know, it's just, you know, he
Yeah.
was a good character. He just didn't carry himself in a way that you know, he flaunted it, you know.
No,
He was a
he's
bright, yeah. He
well
was,
at when he was when last year when he was at the award ceremony
mhm,
as his film screen at Red Nation
yeah.
International Film Festival, he I felt really he's very precious soul,
Mhm,
and I felt really protective of him. And this was my first time meeting him, right? I just felt very protective of him. And but he had me laughing. He was cracking jokes and he had me laughing, and he was just so like so wonderful to be around and very respectful. He was very respectful to me and to everybody at the festival. And so did he get into show business? Did Mo get him into show business? How did that happen?
Well,
For everybody that's listening, like all the younger generation, you know.
he um when he graduated high school over in Cheyenne River, Eagle Butte High School, and after that, he went down um to stay with his uncle Mo, and he was interested in it, and him and his uncle were talking about it, and we discussed it, and I said, okay, that'll be good, you know. So he went down and he was working, staying and then working over at helping my older brother, his uncle, with you know, his horses, and he was learning a lot from his uncle too. He was teaching him horsemanship skills and um, you know, everything about the horse and around it, and culturally too as well. And I mean, there too, that, you know, my older brother, of course, you know, he's a pretty gifted individual, you know, and I think later in life people will find out how gifted he is. But so he carried on with you know, ceremonies and everything too. I mean, we all learned under the same tutorage too of the individuals that you know, helped us in our spiritual walk. But so he carried on with that, and when during that time when he was down there, he started doing some like the photo shoots and stuff, and his uncle was telling him, hey, you know, it'd be good for you to take some of the acting classes. So he started taking acting classes, and well, he was down there for about a year, and you know, living it up as a young man, you know, and just having fun doing his thing. And they were doing artist shoots here and there, you know, photo shoots. But so I told him, I said, well, since you're going to be down there, I said, why don't you just get yourself a, you know, a degree or something. And so he enrolled down in Haskell, and he started going to school down there, since it was about 50 minutes away from where his uncle lived. Yeah. So he started going to college there, and but during that time too, he was working part-time jobs, and then he was going to school full-time, and then he was doing part-time acting. And so yeah, I mean, like I said, he had a good motor for all of it, and just a, you know, thoughtful all the way around. What a, I mean, he's a he you couldn't ask for a better ambassador for him to go and represent
Yeah.
your nation, your people, your
Right.
family. And he just, wow, he just started doing these calls that they would send out. He would start answering them. I mean, the main thing is show up, you know.
That's
And
it.
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna get every part. I know there's some parts that he actually, there were some good parts that he actually turned down because um, they requested that they required for him to cut his hair, and he was like, "No, I'm
Yeah,
not gonna do it." And that's something that he learned from his uncle and myself, that our hair is our way of life, and it's our connection, it's our power, it's our part of, it's our culture and identity. And he didn't give it a second thought. you
yeah,
know he would tell me after the fact, yeah, I had this. I was like, really? Well, could you have tucked your hair up under a cap or something, but he was like,
exactly.
yeah, he was like, no, I'm gonna have to pass on that, and just
Yeah.
you know um if they
Well, he
want.
was his own man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's, yeah,
yeah. We would debate, he
yeah.
was his own man, and
Oh,
that's what you want, that's what you
yeah,
would.
exactly. As a parent, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you to get in like the
Did I say one thing?
yeah, oh, yes.
There was he would send me his auditions, and I mean the
Do you still
auditions.
have them? Do you still have them?
Yeah, I have a couple of them, and he would this the last audition he did uh for the Jim Thorpe film, and and the I mean, the the emotion that he created just for me watching him play out this part. I mean, it was just, he was reading from a script, but he was playing
Yeah,
it out. And I was like, wow, because he did like two, that one, and he did another scene, and I was like, wow, it just kind of got me, it just kind of like pulled me in, and I was like, wow, I was like, son, I said, you're really good at this, I mean, that is powerful,
yeah,
that is very powerful. But yeah, I mean, he was excelling. I think people would have, it would have been a treat, for Native nations to see, something like that, coming, their way into Hollywood. I was
yeah.
pretty proud of him.
Yes, of course, yeah. Um, you know, I was once in Kansas doing a movie with David Carradine,
Mm.
and once was enough for me to be over there. And my
Mm.
great auntie went to Haskell. Um, and but I'd like to get into the conversation about this. Well, I'm going to ask you this question. I have my own thoughts of what happened, and I'm not going to reveal what I think about it right on this.
Mm.
And I know others have thoughts about what happened with Cole. And knowing the young man that he was and how he carried himself and how he loved deeply his family and his relatives and an up and coming star in our industry, you know and with this whole thing of our missing and murdered relatives um, in places where it's very filled with racism, deep racism. And I know that when you shine really bright like that, in places like that, things happen. And so I'd love if you can share, if you'd like to share, Joe, in what ways do you feel the investigation into Cole's death reflects broader, that's a good word, broader challenges faced by Native families seeking justice for their loved ones?
Mm. Um, like when we when all of that first happened. I mean, I was meeting with an individual. We were in discussion too. I visited with Cole that Thursday, and I was telling him what I was doing because he was excited too. And what we wanted to do was create memorials for the Wounded Knee. And Cole speaking about MMIW, he was an advocate for the MMIW, the cause, and he and also too for just like with the termination era and the boarding school and the genocide, the residentials, he was a strong advocate. And I mean he did his research, but not only his research too that you'd find in books, that he also visited with elders directly. And
Yeah.
with his because there's things that they're not going to tell you in the books.
No.
I think as of recently, the new administration has cut funding that actually investigates those sorts of cases with the residentials. So the thing is that when you have a situation like this happen, when we were coming back from this visit in Utah, and then of course, of all days, it's April Fool's Day. So my brother calls me and I'm like, hey, did you hear from Cole? And I was like, why? And I kept waiting for him to say the April Fool's thing. And what a April. And I was thinking, what a April Fool's joke this is. I said, this is not an April Fool's joke. And he said, well, he missed an addition. And I said, no. I said, but let me call him. I thought maybe phone died, maybe he's oversleeping. I was calling, and I couldn't get a hold of him. And so I called Mo back, and he told me to. I told him that I was gonna actually start calling. We start calling, the hospitals. I started calling the jails, the PD, and that's when they came across. They told me that there was an actual incident that occurred, and he was He was in part of that call, involved in it, and they told me what that there was a domestic situation that was involved, and one thing is that for me it was off out of left field to hear something like that. I thought maybe there has to be an explanation for this. I mean, with Cole's demeanor and character, no. I just, not just because he's my son, but because I know the type of individual that he is. And everybody, I mean, if you talk to them, everybody, I mean, I don't condone violence against women. I don't condone violence against children. And so when I called them, I said, well, I need to locate him. Is he there? They told me at first that he was actually there in the facility. I said, really? I said, okay. So, I felt better. I was like, okay, he's safe, and then they called me back and they said, well, we're sorry, we made a mistake. He's not here. I was like, well, where is he? And they said that they didn't know. That was they try to get the information from me. It just kind of seemed like I was getting passed, from individual to individual. None of them really knew what was going on, but so I told them I'm filing a missing persons report. So nothing about the incident was ever discussed about the initial contact with well, there was no initial contact with the officers, with the initial call that kicked off this whole deal. And that's when we start finding out that he was with some of his friends at a local club there, and his hair actually had been cut, and talking to some of his friends, he was pretty upset that his hair was cut, and he went back to his apartment later on, after he helped this young lady and her friend, because her friend was intoxicated. So he helped her and her friend walk to her vehicle, so she was there safe. And then after they're there at their vehicle and they're good to go, Cole went to his car and he got in and he went to his apartment. And that's when this whole initial call came. And it doesn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense to the response that was given to us by law enforcement when I asked about it. The individual never signed a complaint. They never ever gone to the hospital for any injuries, because when I was asking it, because I worked in law enforcement for 19 years, and I was asking, well, where are the injuries? Well, we don't have no photos. I'm like, well, how could you not get photos of an incident like this? So how could you determine that this is a domestic violence scene? There was no injuries on it. And when they told us that there was witnesses to the incident, show me the witness statements. They couldn't, because there was no witnesses to the incident. When they said there was Ring cameras, there wasn't Ring cameras, not plural. There was one Ring camera, and it didn't show. It showed my son walking away, and it's from there he left. Was he with somebody? Did somebody take him? That's the last time that anybody in that area saw him alive. And so when that report went out, there was no contact that law enforcement had with Cole. Obviously the young lady didn't have no injuries. I mean, the evidence has to match the accusations.
Yeah.
And there just wasn't anything that was, in my opinion, when all this was, when after they found my son, I told those officers in the department there, I said, and they said, well, we're gonna dismiss these charges. I said, no. I said, don't dismiss them. I said, because I want to challenge those. I said, show me your evidence. Show me the reason why you put this big target on my son. Show me why my son was made to look like this, and all of a sudden, he's found dead. Everything that we asked for, I think I can honestly tell you that it was basically lip service. They told us that because we asked for preservation of the phone with that young lady, and they wouldn't do it. We asked them to ping my son's phone. They wouldn't do it. I asked them if they could get a warrant to check his financial statement to see if they could find if his card was used, which it was. It was used at a gas station later on that night, and but they didn't do that. They did not do that. They did not make an attempt. They told us that they would. They didn't. They couldn't provide. If they provide information now, then to me it's fabricated, because they didn't do it. We used ceremony. We used family and friends in this search. His vehicle was on a construction site. If it was there that night, then that vehicle was there on a construction site all week. When he was found that Friday. I can't, like, because I don't want to hurt the possible integrity of a case in regards to his death, the
Yeah.
matter. I can tell you though, that he had injuries. I can tell you that he was beat up. I can tell you that you can't hide those sorts of injuries, and there was no explanation to them. I can tell you there was damage on his vehicle. And I can tell you that my son, in the manner of death that they've deemed it as, I mean, remember, after they found him, 3 days later, Johnson County came out with a news press and said, no foul play. How could you deem it no foul play when you had not gotten your autopsy back, when you had not finished your investigation, obviously didn't interview people the way they should have been? How could you deem it no foul play involved? You asked me the question, how do I feel on how the departments handled the case? I don't think they handled it at all. I don't think they made an effort to find out, to first of all help us,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
to help us find my son. They didn't make that effort.
No,
They
the
said they
community
used,
did. The community did. It was all over the internet.
yeah,
Yeah,
good. There's some people there that that don't like minorities. That's a fact. And you said it too. You've been there, you felt it. But there's some individuals there too that, like I said, co-hung with all sorts of people. And man, they came out of the woodworks. And his friends, I call him his Haskell family and his Lawrence family. They all came up. The place that he worked at was the burger stand. Every time I'm there, I try to make it. I make sure that I make it over there. They have they have a booth with a memorial for him in there. Those people just, you know, I was, you feel a certain sense of relief that that your child, if they're out there in the world and stuff, and the people that they're around, they're good to them, and those people were. But as far as the investigation, as far as the incident, I mean, they got cameras. I mean, you think about it, they got cameras all over these roads. Why? How could you not locate his vehicle, a white Explorer? How could that not be? And on a construction site, why wouldn't the construction company or whoever's running it report it?
yeah.
That call that they made went out, but when I did that missing report, person report, and the manner that they put that out, I told them, I said, you guys just put a target on my son. That's what I told them.
Yeah.
I said, look at this, look at it. I said, was that the case? I mean, did you guys have that sort of evidence that you guys are gonna tag that type of character? Because when those investigators talked to us, oh, they tried to find, they went down every avenue to find out how Cole was. The Cole that was, not telling us who he was. But I tried to tell him, I said, no, I said, my son's always in contact with us. We're a close family unit,
Yeah.
close knit, and with his siblings, very close. I mean, he is so close. I mean, they were in contact, through the technology that the younger generations use this day. They
Oh,
were
yeah.
in contact every day.
Constantly.
Yes, always. And
Constantly.
nothing was done without them knowing, but they couldn't believe that, Cole was the sort of individual that I explained, or we explained, or his friends explained to them how he was. And it's just like they were just trying to dig up dirt on him. And good luck,
Yeah, there isn't any.
find a better person than who he was, you know. And whatever happened there at that initial incident, yeah. I mean, when we first got word from that side of of those individuals, you know, they're trying to have us do a statement saying that those people weren't involved or weren't responsible. I was like, what? I was like, no. I mean, their lawyer contacted a lawyer, and no, I'm sorry, but we're right in the middle of this. Why are you, you know, we need to know what happened. And honestly, I feel that that first initial incident, there was a lot of
In the
information.
bar,
Yes.
in the bar is where it started.
No, I mean, there we,
Oh.
from there to the apartment of
Ah,
when, yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, when he left. And I feel there was a lot of information that wasn't shared. So yeah, I feel that, you know, we haven't been, I understand, I was in law enforcement for, like I said, for 19 years. My oldest son, Joey, he's law enforcement, a real good police officer. And, you know, I would like to think that those individuals did everything they could to find out what happened, but that's just not the case.
No, the evidence doesn't show that.
The evidence doesn't show it, and also too, them telling us what they didn't do.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line. They didn't. His phone was missing. We, you know, the phone was missing. They told us that that they did everything they could using high-tech technology, this and that, and they couldn't locate it. But, you know, ceremony through our way is pretty strong, pretty powerful.
Yes, it is.
And, you know, that helped us to be able to you know, to locate it. So that's secured, you know, just and the police department's aware of it, Honor. You know, we had gone through a PI and at the beginning, and he didn't do us any justice. The issues that we had, that I was bringing up, in the discrepancies on our discussion with law enforcement there, because after Friday, that Monday, they took me and my older brother into this room, and there must have been about 15 people around us, and they showed us all, you know, the reports and the videos and everything. So we watched everything, and I had questions. I asked them directly, and no, we just you know, it's yeah, it didn't happen. They didn't
So in other words, this is an unsolved mystery, unsolved case. And that needs to still be investigated, or ongoing investigation.
Well, if you think about it, okay, so we have a lot of cases, and it's ironic that my son is a part of, you know, on that side, you know, spirit world, and he stood for those justices,
Yeah.
for our people, because it's a disservice. You know, you have missing reports, you know, and, you know, years later they start finding bones, and they say, oh, that's what happened. Well, you never looked, you never helped.
Yeah.
Or even how could you know, somebody be brutally beaten, and then deemed is that it's self-inflicted? How can that be? How do you, in your mind, how do you justify that, or do you ask the question, what happened? I mean, it's something happened, and, you know, that's the case for a lot of our people out there. And we're doing this, the event in Washington DC for you know, for MMIW, MMIP, and I asked people if they wanted me to say their relatives' names that were involved with this, you know, that are victims of this. And there were so many names that just
Yeah.
today that people sent me, and it's so sad.
Yeah.
And some of them have stories that come with them too. And you know, there just isn't explanations. And that
Yeah.
explanation, you know, there is a difference. I do know that there is a difference on how they're handling these cases. And you know, you take, I always think about the Rapid City area. There was a lady that was found deceased, and they found, I think it was trace evidence of an individual, an Indian boy, and he ended up getting charged for murder. Trace evidence, nothing tied to the case itself, but he ends up getting put in jail. They obviously they did their investigation, and they found, you know, through their court, through their justices, they found the individual that was responsible. And in the meantime, there was, around that same time, there was a young girl that was beaten brutally and killed in her own home, an Indian girl. Nothing yet. They still haven't found the individuals that were involved with that, because she didn't do that herself.
Yeah.
You know, what do they write it off as unintended, self-inflicted?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't explain it. Do you have, how many cases of Indians being found along the Rapid Creek up in Rapid City? Nobody's, there's a, you know, if you ask me, there's a serial killer on the loose out there. Or
There's several.
is it a group effort? You know, and
Yeah.
but they're just Indians. Remember that.
Right.
Just Indians.
I
And
mean, even with Emily Pike, who was completely dismantled, Apache teenager, young girl. She was a girl. You know, Joe, you may not know this, but the reason why we launched Why We Wear Red is because in 1980, I was on tour. And I left the tour because the lead singer, a very well-known band, had raped me, and I left the tour. And I was on a plane, and I always tell everybody, don't, you know, even if you're at a bar, wherever you're at, even if you're at a restaurant and you're with friends or whatever, and you have a glass of water, you have a drink, and you have to go to the restroom, when you come back, get another one, get a new one, right? Because these guys put something in my drink on the airplane, and these people I was talking to, and they kidnapped me for 10 days, and they held me hostage for 10 days. And I, you know, I was unconscious for most of it, but when I would wake up, I would see what was happening, and then go, you know, pass out again. But when this one time I came to consciousness, and I said, you know, my family's going to be looking for me, and they're going to find me. You better take me home. And they listened. Through whatever miracle that happened that time, they listened, and they dropped me off. And I had to be really cool, and I had to stay really calm in that car. I didn't move. I didn't do anything. I just prayed the whole time to be dropped off. So this is why this is so close to me, and why this issue, that's not even a good word, you know, is very important, of our missing and murdered Indigenous women and people and relatives, and the lack of media, right? The lack of inclusion of us is a direct result of our missing and murdered. Because who cares? Nothing's going to happen. No one's going to be held accountable. We'll just drop some BS paperwork, and they're Indian. Then who cares, right? So, and it's just now recently, you know, that things are happening. And I have to say this, you know, the politics that are happening today, Joe Biden, he put into to office, or you know, the Women's Act, you know, and that was a launching pad into all of this, and has helped open those doors for investigations and for the media to take a little bit of a notice. And because Cole and Mitzi Upham, it has brought national attention, right? Because they were in our industry. But the ones that aren't in our industry, our relatives that are on the res, our relatives that are in urban communities that, you know, don't have, you know, that are not in the industry, don't get that media attention. And it's like, it needs to change. It just, and it just needs to change. And we're changing it by doing this conversation, Joe. We're changing it for Cole, we're changing it for Mitzi, we're changing it for Emily, we're changing it for, you know, Ashley, you know, we're changing it for a lot of our relatives, and their families that are still grieving as a parent. I can't even say, I can't even speak for you guys. I can't even go there because, but I'm going to ask you another question, Joe. What message or call to action would you like to share with the public and authorities to honor Cole's memory and support other families affected by similar tragedies?
I know that North Dakota has a bill that's being sponsored, and I think it's a red feather alert. And
Yes.
so what they're calling for in that bill is for the, you know, jurisdiction issues that take place. Once they start asking questions, then these departments clam up, and then they get in the foxhole, and they're all bunkered up, and they're just, you're not getting any information out of them after that. You know, for this incident situation, for with regards to my son, I got a lawyer, and I sealed the documents with only myself access to the police reports and to the autopsy, because it's an open state. I had that done because I didn't want, I knew enough that I knew that, you know, for one thing, something that, you know, since it's Cole is so well known, you know, some people in the world are too cruel, and it makes them more than happy to see that pain and suffering. And, you know, not just to protect the integrity of what we're trying to do, because the truth of it will be known. I promise that.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Everything will be out in the open, and we'll be able to, you know, to understand, you know, what took place.
Yeah.
And in honesty. But with the bill, you know, with the lack of cooperation from those certain departments, and they're gonna, you know, they may do their best to represent their department in a way that it seems like they're doing something when they're not. And for me, I think what I want to do, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to present coming Monday in DC, is that I want to be able to present, because I asked if the law in North Dakota that's being sponsored, if it, you know, how is the information being shared? How is the information, you know, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction being shared? And I don't think there's a clear method. So what I'm asking for is that if we had positions that were equivalent to a FBI agent with that sort of jurisdiction, I think that would be helpful. and not just be helpful, but since you have Big Brother, so to speak, kind of taking a look at these cases, and if people are just so willingly destroying evidence, then that needs to be known. If we had a position that was equivalent with the ability, an individual with investigative skills, and also too degreed with the knowledge of our people. I mean, you know, for each region, I mean, there has to be somebody, you know, because to me, I think like the best individual that you could have is somebody that knows, that comes from the people, so they would make those efforts. Then that's a purpose that they're serving, not just there for a paycheck, but a purpose. And with this bill coming out of North Dakota, I feel that if those positions were created with that ability to be able to investigate these cases as they're coming out, so that way, you know, there's some reassurance to our relatives out there that somebody is, you know, that's designed for this specific situation, that would be there to address it and give some feedback back. Not just, you know, you have people that are found with, you know, that are hanging, and their hands are tied behind their backs, and then you're told it was suicide. How does a person do that? We need positions that are actually going to provide you know, feedback, that's going to provide an actual investigation, and a person that's a part of the community that, you know, maybe could work in regions, maybe 2 or 3 of them. But we need those positions available, because right now, you know, you may do the sharing of information, but what information are they going to share with you? If you have a person that's standing right with them along with during the investigation, maybe can take over the investigation as well. Then okay. Now this person's is working this case. They're the best person that we have for it. Then okay. That for me, that would provide some reassurance that, you know, we're getting a fair handshake in this, because we are treated differently. That's a fact, you know. I mean, it goes all the way back to Andrew Jackson, you know, handing out mazurka for Indian scalps, and you know,
Even in our industry, even in our film industry, we're treated. That's why I started all this stuff, because we can, right?
Well, it needs to.
Yeah.
You need it to.
Yeah, I needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's here now. And now, you know, because of my son, you know, I was a supporter before of MMIW.
Yeah.
Now I'm an advocate. Now I'm different.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've been affected.
Yeah. Well, I hope that everyone that's listening today, we thought we were going to be 30 minutes, but we went a little bit over. I hope everybody today that's listening can take this information and, you know, pray about it, think about it. Maybe you might want to join the call to actions and so many of our different communities that you could get involved with and help, you know, in some way. Even wear a t-shirt that's helping, you know, something like that, even, you know, or tell a friend, you know, hey, did you know that this goes on here in this country? And it's happened since the black robes first came anyway. It's been happening for over 500 years. So But yeah, so Joe, I want to say to you and your family that we will never, ever, never, ever give up. And the truth will always be revealed. It always does, especially with the medicine that's carried. It's always revealed. I have unshakable faith in that fact,
Uh-huh.
so however long it takes. So I wish you safe travels for, to go to DC. And give everybody a big hug for me, and tell Sophie next time I see her, I'm gonna dance with her again.
Yeah. I'll let him know. Or one thing
Huh?
one
Yeah.
thing I can say to the relatives and people that are listening is that just thinking of uh Leonard Crodog, um he was always so happy to see the kids with their long hair. And he said, wear your braids. He said, be proud. He said, wear them long, beautiful braids. He said, some of us had to die and some of us had to go to prison so we could be who we are today. Um, and my message is to all the young people out there, be proud of who you are. You don't have to hide that from nobody, and immerse yourself in your culture, in your spirituality, in your prayer. Be strong in that way. And we'll find a way. You're gonna live a good life for it. You're gonna be the new leaders of your people.
Yeah.
Make yourself strong in all those ways. Thank you.
As I always say to the young, you are somebody. I remember one time I was at Sundance ceremony, and one of my friends there, Sundancer, he came up to me, and I don't know, he just looked at me and he came right up to me at Crodoc Sundance, right in my face, right up to my, like this. And he said, you are somebody. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. It was so deep, and so I give that message out to all the youth. You are somebody, and you are royalty. And I hope that you carry that from us. So everybody that has joined us today, I want to thank you for listening and joining us, and write to your Congress members, write to the Senate, write to, please write, just continue getting the message out there however you can. It's really appreciated. And we will continue on with why we wear red. Thank you, everyone. Aheo.